this centre that we're sat in here today, the council, through its corporate asset management team, is considering the future of this building. Now we, as a community, first got to hear about this, not from the council, but from the GHA, who don't own this facility, who talked about this facility being past its best and we need a new one. Now, as I say, they don't own it, so they must be part of some discussion that our community was not party to beforehand. And we know that 600 socially rented flats, the GHA have decided that they will pull them down. They haven't properly consulted with the people. They put on a show and tell kind of exercise, but they haven't done a real consultation. They want to pull those flats down, and they want to replace them with owner-occupied housing and mid-market rent housing. So 600 socially rented homes in Maryhill for the chop, if we're allowing things to go on. And as if you've followed this campaign before, you'll know we've been opposing the privatisation of the 3.5 football pitches of land at Kleiner Street, up by Maryhill Lodge. So we've been moderately successful in that, and we've stopped the council's sell-off, but we've not yet moved forward with our plans to buy that land. We've been subject to our own internal reorganisation, but because of this new information, what's happening here in Wyndford, we've got a big concern. Now obviously this facility has a lack of investment. It does need investment. Whenever the rain comes, they have to shut this place down because the roof leaks. You know, the plumbing here isn't great. A lot of the buildings around are derelict. So there is a real need to see investment in this facility. And there's an AGM for this facility next week. We obviously want to feed into that. Now, our intent as a people's organisation was to pursue a community buyout. Community buyout to secure community-controlled social housing. But the nature of the legislation in Scotland through the community right to buy means that we could potentially talk to the council and see an asset transfer to the community. Or we could go down the route of pursuing a community buyout for this facility. These are all options. But we wanted to just bring people together to discuss the situation as we are understanding it. Because we do feel as a community we're under attack. You've got two bits of vacant land, Kleiner Street and one street, and there's the future of both areas that used to be social housing is up in the air. And then you've had, fortunately rejected, but you've had the nefarious plans of developers at Blackhill Road, which fortunately the Scottish Government have thrown out, but again, that's part of the same process, where, you know, this area, if you look at the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, earnings and advantages in society are right at the bottom quintile. But when you look at location, top, you can't get a better location in this area. So it's no surprise then that we have this, it feels like a feeding frenzy of property development. So, you know, we want to bring an alternative agenda, and that means talking to people's organisation, that means contacting people and speaking directly. So you've probably heard enough from me just now. I'm going to pass on to Trisha to give a little bit of context from recent past.
First of all, I'm Trisha Wilson. I live in the Butney. I don't actually live in the Wyndford, but my brother does, James Wilson. He lives in one of the flats. Basically, I'm the director of one of the groups, which is Maryhill and the Valley Community Development Group, which we are campaigning, one of the main campaigners from Kleiner Street. Yeah. So basically, I was one of the ones down in the Butney. We fought for years to get 33 houses back down there when they were getting demolished. I mean, we weren't even getting nothing back, but the community group down there decided to fight with the help and aid some politicians, some of the councillors and things kind of helped us out, and we ended up getting 33 houses back for the tenants down there. The houses, I just feel that the demolition, I mean, everybody's different. I'm a great believer in change, and the people need to move forward. But the people that live in the flats here, there's not going to be enough houses. If people want to stay here, there's not going to be enough houses built for the ones it's want to stay. So everybody's going to be displaced everywhere. So, I mean, recently, I just feel that everybody's not been told, they've just been fired in, they've not been told anything at all, and you've just been told, well, we're getting demolished and that's it. So
we're not even given a date of demolition, or
I don't know, have they made a date?
No.
No. We're not even moved in the garden section after the garden thing. Then we restore the garden cutter.
I don't know. Well, I
Stay on the like green thing.
I think that's a group, green something in it. That's something to do with that.
Is that
No, yeah, I don't think that's got anything to do with that at all.
See, those wouldn't do all that, wouldn't they? It would go on and cube as well.
I don't really know to tell you the truth. I mean, I'm obviously telling my point where the button. It did take us a number of years. I mean, we were lucky. Essentially, people who back there were really lucky to do that, and then we had people fighting for that. I mean, that it kind of helped us out. But as I say, I think that people here need to stick together. And I mean, I know some people will want to move. That's fine. That's fair enough. But there's other people that don't. So I think it's just sitting together. I mean, I know they have rehoused a number of people already. One of my brother is one of them. I mean, so, but he's happy. I mean, but other people might not be happy. So it's really down to the individual and how they want to proceed, moving, staying here, whatever. But mainly, I'm part of the group that's going to work with us and try and help. See if we can get best for you, you know what I mean? So every one of these are different, as I say, and you all want something different, so I'll be here to work with it and other people for the group to try and
prevent the high rises from being pulled down.
Well, this is a separate question, so we'll get to the kind of discussion. I want to bring in Laura, because she's one of our directors, because obviously around the high flats is a lot of green space, and the plans from the GHA are to build on all of that. So build on all of that green space, and it's a concern that we've got in general.
Yeah, so what I've found is, people are really concerned about that, what's going to happen to all the green space. Because a lot of the time what they seem to like do as well, they'll tear down social housing, which is in a Leader Studio or Hamilton Hill, and then they won't build anything, and it'll just be dead land. And now what they're trying to do. Yeah, well, see, what I think they want to do is they want to take over all of this green space, basically from the hill coming up from the hill road over there, all the way down to Wyndford Road. That's all going to be gone, you know? So it's like an already used space currently. You've got 600 houses, you've got all this green space.
The solar system.
Well, exactly. They've done a lot of investment in the area.
So
yeah, exactly. So why spend all that money fixing it up and then tear it down? Saying that it's not up to scratch and all this. So, but I think it's a plan more generally that they're trying to basically, like Nick said, this land is itself worth millions. So it's for private developers. They want to build houses on all this lovely land, like green space that we've got, and eventually the people that live here aren't going to be able to afford to live here anymore. And I think that's kind of the plan generally, and I'm really sad to see that happen because I think people feel really strongly here and down in the valley, all over Maryhill and also in the West End, that this is worth preserving, this whole green corridor that we've got here.
I want to stay in Wyndford.
Yeah.
I've been lucky in the high rise I'm in because I've been lucky with my neighbours. You know, I don't want to move somewhere else and neighbours have wild parties.
The decision for that should be yours to make, not anyone else's, not someone unseen behind the GHG's smoke barrels.
Some cigar smoker
Exactly.
with big high heels and £100,000 electric car.
You can imagine when the TV
That's the thing about community nowadays. Where everybody, it's not like a community for the older. When I was kind of young, growing up, brought up in the valley, brought up in the Butney, I mean, it's not the same at the moment because down at the Botany, what they actually done down there with the houses down there, it was mixed tenure.
Was that where they put the gardens? The gardens? They're up along.
No, I don't think, no. The houses down at the Botany, do you know what the Botany is? What they actually done there is obviously, when they gave us a row of houses, so we were in Maryhill housing, but they actually had bought houses on the other side, so they actually got the better land than we actually got, because we had a lot of problems with our land, a lot of problems with the houses as well, but that's another story. But what they actually done, there's no community there. We feel segregated. I came to the Botany, I was there 18 years before we got before the houses got demolished. And what happened is when they put the new, no harming the homeowners, but they are separated. They don't, I mean, they kind of kept us kind of quiet. It's not like a community anymore. You can't trap somebody's door and ask for help, you can't, I mean, it's not the same. You might get an odd handful of people, like when it's snowing or whatever, will come out and help you in with your driveway. But I did notice that, but as I say, things like, for instance, for example, there was like, they made the new people and the homeowners made a group up, like an activity group for the area, like a neighbourhood watch or something, whatever. But then when I would try to get into it, the block has even let the tenants into it, so as if they're segregated, and they've actually, I mean, because it's a different class.
Aye,
I mean,
spot on. And I love your analysis of that because I think it's far too easy in the GHA and the people that make the decisions, they want us to be fighting amongst ourselves, blaming each other for the lack of community. But you're spot on when you point to the structural problems that are barriers constantly to our access to community.
Yeah.
You're spot on with that. It's a class issue, it's not an individual issue.
That's what it is, and as I say, it's they separate all the time. They separate us with them, they do their own thing, whatever. As I say, there is a handful that maybe interact with us and whatever, but it's not the same.
I can imagine if you go to the land where they were saying to shelter down, we shelter
I mean, everybody's different, we're all different, we've all got different ways of living, different, but at the end of the day, we're all the same, our aims are all the same. We want a good place, a good community to live, that we can bring our families up, that they can continue taking that forward for us, you know what I mean? So it's setting the roots in stone for them, and I just think it's totally disappointing.
Something you said there, Tricia, was about everybody going off, so they're going to clear as much of the flats as possible, rehouse people, particularly people who want out area will take it, and the numbers will be reduced. So you made a very good point about when the numbers are reduced, they can have lots and lots of co-ownership, owned block houses, and they can justify putting in a very small amount if we were lucky enough to get that. But actually I think the lobbying has to be based on keeping so much green space, open it up to people, because actually as much as people might leave, what people would choose to stay and fight, if there's no space for their children, they may be forced to leave. So it's about retaining as many spaces, many social housing spaces as we can, because you're right, it's not enough just, that's a perfect example of how, even though you're successful, how it can still be to the detriment of a group of people within the community. I think I think that's a really important point to think about. Holding on to 600 social houses, not 40 people that remain.
So, obviously there's lots of things we can do, and you know, there are different neighbourhood organisations that we want to work with. We're in the Wyndford just now, you know, there's the Wyndford Residents Union who, I see some prominent members here who are active in that. But the purpose of the Valley and Maryhill Community Development Company is to use the legislation that exists. Now there's various options that we have, obviously, and we've principally started to try and stop the privatisation of the Valley. And we wanted to do that using the Community Right to Buy Act. Because that allows, if you establish yourself as a community body, which we have, we've met the government's test, and then if you reach 10 to 20% of all the local electors in your given area supporting you through a petition, then you can become basically the primary buyer for the site. You get first right of refusal for 5 years. to buy that land. Now the council can call your bluff. The council can call your bluff and say, well, then buy the land, and then we'd have to raise £10 million. But that's not beyond us. However, as I said, the purpose of the meeting today is this place is all under threat. And there's a potential to use similar legislation to get an asset transfer. Now we want to just start the dialogue on that. We don't have any prescriptive vision of what we want to do, but there's that prospect. And then on the wider stuff about the green space, you know, Bob can talk about this a wee bit in terms of common good land. A wee anecdote, we have the Maryhill Borough Halls because the council tried to close it long before my time, it was in the 1980s. And a local community campaigner here, Kenny McLachlan, found out that that land was common good land. It was in the common good asset register. And that was land that, in fact, Robert Bruce created. Bob can talk about this a wee bit more, but basically that was land owned by the boroughs, not by the council. So that's why the council wasn't able to demolish that and turn it into flats. Now, there had to be a fight to reopen it to get investment, but ultimately, using that piece of legislation, the community here was able to get that facility. It's a useful facility to us today. But there's other bits of legislation that could be valuable to us. One of the things that strikes me about the green space is if we were to find out, not just if we were common good land, but if we were to establish a local place plan and say, no, this area, this football pitch here, or this playing field, or this bit of grass, we've zoned that. We've zoned that as our recreational green space in our plans. Now, there's all these options. Some of it's a bit technical and some of it's a bit not, but I want to hand over to Bob, because Bob's had some recent experience of beating City Hall.
He's put me on the spot here, by the way. I've been involved in, well, in terms of the common good, there's a project, Common Good Awareness project, which is to make people aware of all these commons. You know, there's a common good fund which is unique to this country. It exists in every village up north, every inner city. Kelvin Grove Art Galleries is part of Glasgow's Common Good Fund. And the idea is any monies that's made off the Common Good Fund and rents and sales should get put back into the Common Good Fund in order for communities to use the money to do whatever they want to do. Eh?
Like a TSP, trustees, owned by trustees, and more trustees.
Aye. Well, it's basically the council. The council are the trustees for our commons. They're the ones that's supposed to look after it and make sure the money gets into the coffers. But basically the council's wanting to get rid of it, obviously, because there's been lots of good campaigns like Pollock Park, when they tried to put a Go Ape thing in the woods, there's beautiful woods, and they wanted to put all these stupid swings and stuff like that in it. And people win that campaign, and they put that park on the Common Good Register, which was a great thing. In the Botanic Gardens, if you remember, they were trying to build a pub in the Botanic Gardens and stuff. That was another one that was win.
Is that the one with the campaign? You made the campaign instead?
They were going to put a pub in it where the old station was or something. But I'm saying there's loads of these campaigns that win, and the bandstand at Kelvin Grove, which was a 25-year campaign to reopen the bandstand. Of course, the people who run the campaign didn't get much credit for it. You know, the council just lopped in again and used it as a. One of the things was the bandstand was for people to enjoy. It wasn't for people to drink. Parts were there for drinking. So when the bandstand reopened, the first thing they did was they had a kind of brewers in to run gigs with it and stuff like that. So they kind of take it back off you again. But this is dead important. This green land is just as important as your house. And I've done campaigns with, the Red Road Flats. Where does all the people go when you knock down the Red Road Flats? They've only built wee houses round about there. Straight into the hands of private landlords. And the other one was, what's it called? Where the big supermarket is up. Glasgow Cross. There's a big massive blocks of flats there. Sight Hill, the same as Sight Hill. You know, they kept saying they were going to have ask residents whether they wanted the flats there, they don't want the flats there, and they kept putting it off. And the residents did their own consultation. 75% of the people wanted to stay in the flats, but they still knocked the flats down. And it's the same thing where do all these people go? Private landlords. In Glasgow there seems to be this obsession about owning a house. People think owning a house is going to solve your problems. You know, the mortgage, you know, it's what you're worth till you die. That's what it means. And as soon as you start mortgaging things, it's banks. It's just the banks start owning your property.
Well, you know, the war is bad, but we're going to kind of close the speaking bit and we'll open up to more discussive, just with a wee bit of the old masters, Saul Linsky here.
But can I just say something?
Sure.
I mean, most of the stuff I do is filming. I saw your wee video on the thing, and I think it's dead important to flood the community with information. You know, just be short films and different ideas, because a lot of people are unaware of the machinations with all this kind of stuff, and if they move outside, and it's basically disrupting communities is the name of the game. But you can actually use wee ideas and speak about ideas and pull that community back together again. And that's what I do, and I'm quite happy if anybody's got a story to tell or they want to make a wee film. Just.
Now, obviously, you mentioned the Sight Hill example, they lost there. There's other places where communities have won. To do that requires power, so I'm going to talk a wee bit about conflict tactics, because obviously we're talking a wee bit about law, using the law, but we can go beyond that. A people's organisation is a conflict group. This must be openly and fully recognised. Its sole reason for coming into being is to wage war against all evils which cause suffering and unhappiness. A people's organisation is the banding together of large numbers of men and women to fight for those rights which ensure a decent way of life. Most of this constant conflict will take place in orderly and conventionally approved legal procedures. But in all fights, there comes time when the law spoke too softly to be heard in such a noise of war. The building of a people's organisation is the building of a new power group, and this is the salient point in terms of what we've experienced. The creation of any new power group automatically becomes an intrusion and a threat to the existing power arrangements. It carries with it the menacing implication of displacement and disorganisation of the status quo. Now, the status quo is we get told what's happening to us. We get told that our businesses are getting pulled down. We get told that our parks are getting paved over. Now, we need to upend and disrupt that. And that's really what we want to talk about today. What ideas you have. So over to you.
Well, I mean, I was thinking about when Tricia was saying she got, you know, there's councillors on board. So, how long ago was this? Are any of those councillors still around?
Well, I think the council that helped us at the time, he's MSP now, he's up now, it was Bob Doris at the time, it kind of helped us out. Yeah, it's definitely, the council is in just now, I mean, helping groups, helping see what they're all about and supporting us. So, yeah, as I say, I know things have changed. It's 11 years ago. I mean, I've been in the one 11 years, it could have been 12 years since then. But as I say, there was help then. Obviously, there was a few councillors involved that kind of put us in it, help us fight for what we wanted. As I say, we wanted all to be social housing down there, but as I say, we were lucky to get anything back. And the group that we ended up running a consultation group, and we were doing Maryhill housing and different. We actually picked the colour of the brick and this. I mean, we kind of were on site and we were halfway through, seeing the development. So we kind of worked with the people, the contractors and things, to kind of help. As I say, we picked everything. We knew what we were wanting, we knew the size of houses, and how many people was in back. The way we done it was, well, wasn't as it done it, it was actually, it was like the highest ones that lived there, say maybe 30 years, and it went down to, I was in 18 years, so if you came in with at 33 in that category, you were one of the lucky ones to get back, but there was a lot of ones that didn't get back, and I mean, who wants to go back. But as I say, that's where we were 11 years ago, but there is counselling people that can help.
I think actually what I was thinking as you were talking is I thought, well, you know what, there's a bit of it depends where, who was the person who said Bob something? It was been
Bob Doris, he's MSP now.
So what I was wondering is that you'll tap into who that person is, if not them directly. You know, did you send it? So there you go. So actually, you know, would there be somewhere where, you know, bringing them back in and saying, you know, do you remember that you were behind this? You know, bring them in and say, what we did. Are you up for the involved?
I think he was involved in a discussion on Zoom, was it not? Nick?
Yeah.
On the Kalina Street campaign.
So he's
I mean, obviously we kind of involved a few kids.
I've been saying here, I've stayed in the main for 41 meals, and that was for because of those the parts coming down. And it was one of these 4 weeks that got in touch with me, and I went, I'm sorry, Mr. Dodd's cannot say anything at the minute because it's still under consideration. No, so basically, no reply, Bill.
Yeah, I think we'll bring this up to later, but on the topic of like getting people involved and bringing people in, I was actually speaking to a journalist from the Glasgow Times a couple of weeks ago on a related topic. What it was I had the thought, when the government scheme for housing Ukrainian refugees became a news story, I was thinking, well, I'm sitting in a building that's perfectly livable, that's being emptied out, and like indeed the flat right opposite me is empty. So I actually, like I was posting up stuff on my Facebook page saying, well, why can't we have Ukrainian refugees? You know, I'm sure this situation is local to Glasgow, but I'm sure there's plenty of situations across the country that are similar to this, where buildings are being repurposed, rebuilt, knocked down, and restored. Where in the interim, I mean, when they had the meeting when the housing authority had the meeting in this room about the situation, they were saying that they weren't even really be getting any kind of definite kind of permission to knock the 4 buildings down until the end of this year, the end of this calendar year. So that's like 9 months where there's going to be flats in these buildings sitting empty. They're sitting empty right now. And so I was coming at this from the point of view of the Ukrainian housing crisis. But then I was actually, but as a coincidence I was aware of the situation anyway, but as a coincidence I got your leaflet through my door. And I was thinking, well, this is actually a situation which reverses the direction that the council and the housing authority are pushing in rather than getting people out of the building, we get people into the building, into the buildings, and then they say, well, these people need a place to live in the short term. We're not directly opposing you. We're not saying these buildings are never going to get knocked down because, I mean, fair play, a lot of these flats are really single-person flats or a couple at a push. They're not suitable for families in the long term, but in an emergency situation, they've got to be seen as a viable alternative to housing these people with families in family homes or with volunteers sharing quarters with other people. It means they can live independently. It means they can have like a community basis. There'll be people around them that speak their own language, understand their own culture. A community, give them a basis for a community in Britain, outside of their own country, while this situation is going on. I mean, the future is the future, where that moves on from there. So the point is, with respect to what's being said here, like I say, it puts pressure on local, national government, housing authority to reverse the direction that they want to go in, putting people into the building rather than taking them out.
Was your journalist one to cover that? You were saying you mentioned
Well,
it.
she contacted me. Like I was, like I say, I was doing this on my Facebook page, and she contacted me via Facebook, and then we had a bit of a phone conversation, and then she said, "Well, I know I got in touch with you. I've spoken to my editor about this, and this isn't something that I want to get in touch with." But that was purely from the perspective of it being about Ukrainian refugees. I was thinking if we make it an aspect of a larger scale coordinated campaign, as I say, to reverse the direction that the council and the housing authority want to push us in, it's a very high profile story. Having the involvement of the housing union and having the aspect of, well, we're against the buildings being knocked down in general, this is what's happening, like, making the story also about the larger issues, then that might be a story that is of interest. I mean, the point is, I've got contact details for this journalist. So I mean, if we put the story in a different light, I mean, we can contact her, and the worst you can do is still say no. So,
Definitely something to follow up.
yeah.
It's definitely
Just on the point about trying to build back the community, I think what we need to do first and foremost is to try and build a bit of a big campaign around this, and it's going to involve a lot of support from families who live here and families who live in the surrounding area. And I think a good idea to enable that engagement would be if we could, I know we've got a bit short time as it is and we're all working hard and within the struggle in our own ways, but if we could organise some sort of regular social gatherings as well as political gatherings, because in order to reach people who are politically engaged, you're going to have to meet them where they are. And if people aren't going to come to these sorts of things, if they think that's for people that are in politics, that's not for me. But if we can organise social-based activities which we can plug the issues at, then I think that's a good place to start. I also think, and I'm not, these are actually really relevant to you guys, and I'll get into it in a minute, but I've got a couple of leaflets that I'm going to disperse among you that are relevant to us. One of them is on the cost of living crisis, and the other is on the abysmal state of public transport in Glasgow. And I think if we look at some of the leafleting that's going around just now across the different campaigns, there's things to be learned from that. For example, on this one, the public transport one, so it's like ripping all leaflets, there's a QR code which, if you scan it, it will give you a link automatically to send a letter to your local councillor to demand what is stated on the letter, which is, we want the council to take ownership of public transport so that we can plan routes and cap fares, reinvest profits in improving services, connect buses, trains, subway, ferries and more, have one simple ticket across all transport modes, wouldn't that be great? And provide a world-class service that works for us. We want this to be done and thinking in green terms as well. So I think if we could start off with a list of demands that we want to be met, and if we can engage people and doing something as simple as scanning a QR code, pressing a button and it sends a letter to a councillor, that's something that's dead easy to get people involved in. If you're absolutely. If you're at a social event or something like that, these can be lying around, you know what I mean? If we had something like similar for our campaign, and I think if we could meet together, if we could meet together to come up with a concise list of demands, what we stand for in the barracks group is a good place to start, I think. What are our demands? And then we can engage the community to get on our side with the demands, and then what we need to do is get a meeting with GHA, which as the Wyndford residents union have been trying to do that for a while now. It's a harder thing to do than you would think. So the public support's crucial to that.
Can I say something about that? I'm involved with that campaign, and I go out in my rickshaw, and it's a magnet for evening times. I don't know how many times I've been doing photographing at the evening times and stuff. But I mean, I was involved in the school campaigns here way back, and people didn't really know what to get up to when they were starting doing the things. But then they started having workshops and different stuff like that, and it was brilliant just watching, particularly the women with kids, just growing politically, you know, through that campaign. And it was like the council shut off the water, or somebody says they shut off the water. They didn't really shut off the water, but we had a water festival the next day on a Saturday with hundreds of these wee paddling pools out there, and all the Wednesday water guns and blah blah. It was just such a brilliant day, you know, this kind of thing. But the water was actually on. But it was just using all these wee elements, and exactly what you're talking about. You need to have a community. We've got that green space up there, you know, the valley. We've got a bank account. It wouldn't be too much effort to put a container on it and have a spot where people could come. And I know nursery groups and all this want to use it. And the only reason they can't use it is because there's nothing there to put your gear in and stuff like that. And these kind of things I'd be well into helping to organise. You know, that kind of notion. You have to rattle keys for people. They're away watching the telly and, I'm not going out. But if you give them something they enjoy, it can still be political and it can still get your... So I'd be very interested in talking about that, if anybody's wanting to talk about that side of it.
I still remember when the football pitches were being used, because there was like football teams coming up and using them.
I remember the BG played football over there. Cleveland as well playing around that. And you go through the decks and all that.
I guess it's hard to go out in the balcony and watch them playing football. There was nothing.
Well, there's a few people that we haven't heard from today. I wonder any contributions anyone would like to make that hasn't spoken so far.
No, at the one time. One at a time.
Are we going to have sort of regular meetings?
So we've been having our own reorganisation, it's fair to say, over the past month or so. So we wanted to do this as a first step, and I know we want to do regular public meetings like this, just to build a kind of momentum. Well, yeah, exactly. And as I said, if we were to go ahead with the community buyout at Paulina Street, for example, we would need 20% of the local electors to sign the petition. So we're going to have to do an awful lot of talking to people and outreach. The asset transfer thing for this place was just something that we wanted to kind of discuss. This is up in the air, the vacant facility, and as Bob said, we have this facility because the community fought back against the school board.
He's a jolly person.
That's why this place exists. Well, it's not so much to take for granted, because the council granted this unwillingly due to the community. So if we want to retain it, if we want to keep it, then it needs support from the community. And obviously that's council trying to stay, and that feels why we're interviewing people and having a discussion. But yeah, I think you're right, that's absolutely.
I certainly would get involved, you know, be interested in that.
That would be excellent. And what I say as well is, before anyone disappears, if we don't have your contact details, I don't think they do matter, or yourself, sir, I think it would be valuable to get those so that we can include you in any kind of future discussions and things.
By the way, I don't know if people are aware, but there was actually a national news story in The Guardian about the 4 flats. I don't know how many people saw that, but I just happened to see it. And I happened to see it. It was somebody linked to it in one of the local Maryhill Facebook community groups, which are tools we leverage, by the way.
I just had a thought that's to do with the building here. Actually, I was thinking about, and I suppose it ties in a bit what you're saying about making sure it's always in use. But obviously, if there's repairs, we have to close it. But actually, if you think about the Town Park Business Centre, it's a fantastic. I think it's closed for refurb. But it's been running and situated. They don't allow you to come in and like have bands, you know, with bars and stuff. So they've genuinely got community groups coming in. It's been really, really successful. It's a fantastic model. But actually, temporarily, it's about opening up even to all community and maybe beyond. Just any group that wants to come, fill the hall. Have somebody making sure the hall's full at all times, build the community that way.
On my way out.
But I don't know how often this is used, how well this is used. I have no knowledge.
In fairness, this facility is extremely well used.
It's extremely well used. There's very little slots there, so there's no. But it's basically making it so that there are. Say you're bringing in like the Town Park business model temporarily. The people who run it and the board who run it are. how would I describe it? They have got so many groups on board now that you're extending your links to bigger communities. So you put more bums on seats basically. You know, it's like Stephanie said, let's get more people, they're community minded, so it's more groups. So it's just another way of building what you're saying. Build the space until it's down. Well, even if it comes to a community buyout, you would have maybe 40 groups that don't necessarily belong to the Wyndford or Maryhill, but actually become invested, because I know a couple of people involved in kind of patching the model works because it's people from all over the city who've gone onto the board because they're invested in what they bring to the organisation and the facilities they use. So they're invested in the area, so they're invested in that building. So it's about it's just an add-on to it.
If you have links to the wider communities and other community facilities, then it becomes harder to shut those individual facilities down.
Absolutely.
Because you say you have like a crash here, and they say, and you've got people from Summer Hall or Rookhill coming in to the crash here, and they say, well, we want to close the centre down. So, well, where are all these mothers and single fathers and children going to take? You know, that's impacting on the whole community environment, not just Maryhill, not just Maryhill Wyndford.
As I say, a few voices we haven't heard from, and more towards the end of that table. Anyone else want to contribute?
Then we discussed the kind of angle of management manipulation by the John Wheatley group, where they install people into dwellings who don't want to be there, and they then tell everybody that they actually can find prices for these people who they wanted to can in order to demolish them. So you put in people who don't want to live there, garner their support because they don't want to live there, and then you tell them that they can find you another house. Why didn't the management put them in that alternative house in the first place and market the high rises to people who want to live there? Or, you know, analyse the area so that you know what are the deficiencies, why do people or certain types of people. You cannot please everybody. Yeah? You can't build a house that, you know, with a high rise. Some people just don't want high rise up. I mean, there's some people who do. So why can't you find those people and install them?
Yeah.
Now, you get assets that were built in the 1960s. Now, it was part of the comprehensive development area of Wyndford, and there were several in Glasgow City in the 60s and 70s. But what they paid for, they are structurally sound. They have an EPC rating C, which is within the government guidelines. You know, that's what they're looking for, is a minimum C rating. So you've got all of that, but yet you read in the papers that a GHA representative or John Wheatley responds that they're concrete, they're hard to insulate. You've already insulated them. You've already spent the money. You've already got the documentation you can find online with an EPC C rate. What is this about demolishing them, removing all the green space? Well, you know, fundamentally you still have this problem for many people about car parking. Where do these people go? You're not going to improve the transport system. You need a private company to do that. You're not going to sponsor a private company to improve public transport. Are you GHA? Are they going to do that? I don't think they're going to do that.
There's no big picture thing.
Therefore, John Wheatley Group, what on earth are you going on about? Is this just like is this a fad? You know, is this like, you know, we'll chase the next indicator of housing design, which could be the slum in 30 and 40 years' time? You know, we've got guaranteed structurally sound housing, right? We've got plenty of people who live on their own or couples. You know, what is this about, John Wheatley Group?
I mean, it's a no-brainer that they want rid of you. They want you out of here. You know, they had a wall in this place, and they thought it would be a good idea to throw everybody in here. And now it's becoming a nice place to live in, and the wall's quite good because it gives you a community environment, blah, blah, blah. So you need to get rid of the scum out of the place so we can get decent people in to buy the houses and this and that. And that's what they're about. They're not interested in models and common sense and how you can build things and using things and all this. They don't care. They want people out of the place. That's our problem.
I'm not interested in community, because if they're interested in community, why doesn't each one of those power blocks have a residents association? What happened to the residents association in the 70s and 80s? They got rid of them, and they created this framework now in the Housing Scotland Act that stipulated that as long as you have one group that represents an area, and in that group, when you join, you cannot bring your problems into the group. You're excluded. You can only do what the employee tells you. If the employee tells you that you can only discuss a big dog poo, that's all you discuss all day long. Yeah? And that fundamentally at government level, civil service has to come back with ministers and say, look, the legislation is wrong. I think I posted, or someone posted online, I think the civil service had a giggle, had a laugh when they created the legislation for registered social housing landlords, because they made sure that they excluded people. Although it looked from the framework that people were included, it's actually run by employees. They choose, the directors are chosen in some housing associations by the employees. You know, the factor companies, subsidiary companies are chosen by the employees. And overall the employees run the housing stock. They don't have people running the housing stock. Apparently they've said that they're going to create new groups. As I read again in the newspaper article, as to whether that's going to happen and why didn't we do that in the first place.
So I think that's I think it's a legislation's like one aspect, so it's coming at it from one end. And I'm not from Maryhill, I live in Partick, but I'm working class, and I don't want to make this a class thing. But I truly believe what Stephanie's saying about connecting with people. And one of the things I'm going to say is that, I said it earlier, but my experience is that a lot of people can't engage because they have been broken by the system. The legislation does exist to break them, so I agree with you, it's all designed to break you, and if you've had to endure, we're lucky enough that we are actually able to be here today. That's the truth, that's how I see it. We're the fortunate ones that can come in here and debate like this. And to connect with people who would like to connect, we need, I've experienced this myself, you need groups, you need social events, you need ways in to connect with people to bring them back. And if they choose to pick up the politics, great. But even if they're just there as a number, even if they would connect on a tea dance or kids getting together, that's what they need from their community. It's not for anyone to determine what it is, and legislation is the furthest thing from their mind. So I think it's about understanding to get the numbers. Legislation and politics can be it's too much to bear. And I've been in that situation, and I've been political in my life and acting, but actually times when I can't bear it, it becomes overwhelming. You need to go back and think of yourself and then step back in. So I really understand where people are at.
I just wanted to say that we need to remember that the people who make the decisions aren't from our class. They come from a social class that involves luxury. They have their needs met, so they've got time to think about politics, they've got time to mess with what we do. Whereas the working class who live here, we're busy, we've got really rubbish public transport to deal with, it takes up so much time out of our lives. We don't have a level of social immunity that the middle class and above do, and that's a big part of the reason why we don't have representation as well, who's got the time to do it. So I totally agree there that if we can provide some of these social aspects to people's lives, it's empowering, and we need to have a fully empowered working class before we can have a politically active one.
Webpage,
I was thinking that actually.
Well, we do have a website at the moment, but it's fair to say we're a small team and we're keen to grow it. So it's valuable to have yourself and yourself want to get involved, and good to see some faces that we've seen before as well. I'm conscious.
Sorry, I'd just like to speak to that very very briefly, like we are a growing team and we have got plans, it's a Wyndford residents union, we're going to do some stalls next week, so myself, Eleanor, like doing member defence, and another woman, Kaz, we're going to set up stalls like at the gates and maybe at the weekly park, have a little bit of face painting, she's going to get some glitter stickers and stuff, so we can get talking to, especially a lot of the mothers that use this community centre all the time, and this is also the work here as well, so yeah, we are going to try to, especially with it coming in the summer as well, so it's going to be good, it's a good time to talk to people. Yeah.
Brings people out.
There's a lot of people in the street and talk to them and stuff as well.
Reawaken the radical imagination.
Is it worthwhile when we're doing these wee kind of things? I know obviously we're going to Canary maybe regular public meetings, and hopefully everybody can at least bring one neighbour or a family member or somebody to kind of help out. But just to touch on it, does it think it'd be worthwhile maybe doing some sort of petition? And when we do these wee things, just have somebody and you're speaking to them, well, would you like to support? And write your name so that we can start building up. It's just so that we can start building up. Because it might take a few weeks, it might take a few months, we don't know. But if we can start somewhere, maybe little events and asking people that use the centre if they're excited.
We have a petition about a hub, don't we, circulating?
You have one, yes.
You've
There's a even adding to that.
got written links to 2 separate petitions in the leaflet that I got through and that's really the kind of thing that kind of we got centralised, that kind of, sorry?
Is it on the web?
No, that's what I'm saying. They were on the printed leaflet, and they really kind of need to be in some kind of. And then you've got information like you're taking the video interview that you did. This is all kind of thing. This is all can be accessible. It kind of needs to be accessible from a single, like online version of the leaflet. I think it all needs to be in a central location. It needs to be in a single coordinated location.
I also think that there's a lot of things on that station. It's my brain's just sort of able to catch up. But how did you rally people initially, right? So what did you do? Did you just get together with neighbours? Did you form community groups? What was your
For the button?
Yeah. What did you do?
We were a tenants association. So we sort of kind of a small kind of tenants association in the old tenement kind of houses. So we were kind of running it for a while. So then we started working with getting other people round about to kind of sign petitions. But the petition was one of the main things. We ran door chat and asked them to, at the time we could do it, if you could do that. So there was a whole new things we could say.
Well, I did it up there.
But that's how we kind of got a lot of people involved. Obviously, as I say, we had local councillors that kind of helped us and put us in the right direction, put us on to people. Same as here, everybody's got past. The more people that they can maybe help, it's kind of, and that's how we watch this stuff around, really.
So do you think it was a combination of numbers and the right people connected to the right people? What do you think it was?
I think it was a tenants association tuning themselves to the things.
So there's the message, like, excuse the fun.